Great. Let's call to order. Open session. Metro Vancouver Transit Police and the Police Board respects the Indigenous nations within Metro Vancouver and acknowledges all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people for their continued resilience, sustainable stewardship, and as active members of the community for generations to come. We recognize that working within and managing the region's transportation system, we do have a role to play in supporting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. Welcome everyone, nice to see you all. Let's start with the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull from consent?
Yes, thank you, Marnie. I'd like to pull the consent agenda 1.1E, which is Q1 financial operating status.
Yep.
And 1.1F, which is the Transit Police annual report to the community.
Okay. Josh?
Could I please pull 1.1D?
D? Yep.
I'm going to speak to the one that Bill is into the F, but I'd like to pull G.
G2. Anybody else? Okay, great. Can I get some motion to approve less D, E, F, and G? All right, so let's talk about D first. We'll do it in order here, so go ahead, Josh.
Sure. So just looking at page 2 of the complaint, this is a report. It's noted that from late 2023 onward, the scope of complaint provisions, the Police Act expanded to include CSOs. So 2024, 25, and Q1 26 now reflect public trust complaints for both sworn members and the CSOs. So just a larger number of eligible people than 2023 and prior. So I just think it's positive when you look at that data. Obviously, there's a bit of a bump in 2024, but from 2025 and Q1 of 2026, the numbers look quite stable and actually are trending downward. So I just think that that's something positive to pull out of that report, that even with an increasing number of people eligible, those numbers continue to look relatively positive. I know, there's systemic and other things that we need to consider as a board in terms of people's willingness to file complaints, and accessibility around that, and fear and trust. But I think all that, aside, these numbers look positive, and I think that that's something I'd like to put forward as something to highlight. And I don't know if Chief or Inspector Mead, if there's anything you wanted to add there, some things that have been happening in the last couple of years with the group being added. Training and mentorship that you wanted to talk a bit about in terms of what may be leading to that result. But just wanted to acknowledge it.
No, thank you for those comments. I will turn to Inspector Meaden as well, but just of note, for the board and public, we actually just received from the province and the Police Services branch a formal approval granted for CSO program. That letter was just received. And what I want to share within that program, as we know, it's a program that's been built in-house, and many accolades within that letter towards the program. Specific to your kind of inquiry around our CSO program, number of complaints, a lot of work that's being done sort of in the training that's provided for them. We've also followed up and provided follow-up training days for the individuals as well. And in addition, our professional standards section actually does and meets with her CSOs just to look at trends and complaints and other opportunities. So Inspector Meaden, I'll turn to you for further.
Yes, thanks, Director Myers. I appreciate the positive feedback there. So yeah, you're correct. Since 2023, with the addition of the CSOs, when they're at full complement, that's extra 24 sworn members. So they're now all subject to the Police Act. With their initiation of the program, we had, like you indicated, a spike in 2024. But basically, we just went back between the professional standards and the training unit. We just did some tweaking really with the CSOs, more around training education, just how to deal with the public, and within no time it went to the same levels, similar at very low levels as the police officers. And then just as a professional standards unit, as the chief indicated, we have regular proactive feedback, not only with the CSOs, but with the supervisors, the watch commanders, so we get the heads up as to any potential complaints. And that way, One, we can secure perishable evidence such as video, because sometimes it takes several months for these complaints to show up. So if we're not aware of it, the complaint may show up and the video will be gone. And then it's also to make sure that the officers, if they're concerned there may be a complaint, that they have appropriate, reporting and notes. And then, we'll, on a quarterly basis, attend briefings, just let the members know about on trends or concerns. And then on the training side, when we have our NCO training school for active supervisors, I'll provide a presentation related to professional standards.
Great, thank you very much. Questions? All right, let's talk about E. Bill?
Great, thank you. E is the Q1 financial operating status update. I just thought it may be appropriate to just provide additional insight on that as the chair of the finance committee. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate the chief mayor and her team on a really strong first quarter financial performance. The department did report operating expenses of $15.5 million, which is resulting in a favorable variance of about $260,000 compared to budget. I just want to highlight three additional items on the report. The sworn officer staffing levels are about 95% of authorized strength. The year-end forecast remains consistent with the approved budget, and then the staffing levels continue to maintain ensuring public safety services are not compromised. Those are my quick comments and insights I would like to add to the hearing today. Thank you.
Okay, great. And you pulled F as well,
Yes, thank you. On F, I again want to congratulate the chief and her team for really a phenomenal report. I really like the graphics. I really like the charts. That's important. But the question I do have is that do we track the distribution goals on hard copy, and or do we also track the number of clicks into the report that we get, people that download it electronically? And then if you can just provide additional insight on what those numbers are, it would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll turn to Stephen Crosby, Director of Strategic Services, to answer that specifically.
Yeah, so the report is distributed to the TransLink board in their regular agenda, so that'll go to their next report to them. It goes to our community council members, so it's emailed electronically out to them as well. It is distributed in specific instances, like historically when the chief has gone and presented to like a mayor and council, and generally there's a couple of presentations a year. Sometimes there's follow-ups, so we'll send it out to specific councilors based on questions. The infographic, specifically, we print internally and post around the office. So like our media officer has one posted in his office to refer to when speaking to media, to kind of refer to those specific stats. And then we are also posting to our website. It doesn't get a high volume, I'd say, probably about, one hit per day onto that website. So it's not like corporate reports don't historically get a really high volume in terms of click-throughs. We also provide to TransLink Government Relations. They identify specific opportunities throughout the year to provide it to different to partners. I am meeting with them next week to kind of take another look at this to see what additional opportunities we may have to share with partners. And then we also, there's always the opportunity to print a limited quantity for a specific instance if the board sees an opportunity. So I think a good example would be the community meeting we hold annually. If we want to have printouts in the room to hand out to people attending that community meeting, if it's something the board found advantageous, we could definitely have that prepared and ready to go. And, but yeah, like essentially we send out to the kind of the key partners we have, and then as opportunities present themselves, we distribute those accordingly.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you. I was just wondering the next go around, just maybe there might be an opportunity when we first publish it to make it highlighted on your webpage, where you highlight on some websites, they kind of show hits on the very beginning, so that way instead of going to
like the scroller bar, yeah. Yeah.
Or on the panels where it changes. So,
that's a good idea. Yeah, on the homepage, we do have the scroller going across the very top, so we could put that in place for the next month or two, so it's one of the first things you see.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You can see the high traffic at the very beginning, and the downtrend, the keys that when we have fresh news and it's out there. It's just that, for me, I think it's a great report and really highlights what we do and also helps us on brand.
Yeah, I think when you look at the stats, it's telling a good news story in terms of crime is down, referrals for health services or social services are up. So I think all the information we're seeing there in terms of trend lines are really positive, and it's a good news story to share.
And just to build on that, I think one of the things that I'd like to see, because even talking to some folks at the BC Association of Police Force, there's not always a full understanding of the scope of transit police. And with the expansion coming up, our strategic planning underway, there are partner groups that we're out talking to. My question really is around more of the proactive approach. I think we're at the stage where we've got in a report like this, factual information, statistically backed, that I would love to see go to mayors and councils, First Nation councils, BIAs, like a broad, not just our policing partners, but a much broader strategy for the community engagement kind of going forward. And I know that it takes a bit of time. Instead of sending it out to 10 or 20 people or 20 groups, it should be more like 100, in my opinion, as we try to develop a closer relationship with the communities we're serving, and especially now that they're going out to Langley with SkyTrain and that sort of thing. So I guess my question is that possible through the marketing communications team to expand, be more proactive, and reach the various health authorities, mental health groups, community groups, friendship centers, those types of things?
Yeah, I don't want to preempt TransLink government relations. I know they said they had a few ideas to bring to the table next week when I meet with them, and to really get this out more broadly. So I think we'll take that away and probably meet with TransLink government relations, because they have a lot of those channels established. And then I can email the board once I have a meeting with them about what those opportunities are. Even when they go in front of the mayor's council, getting it as part of their consent agenda. I think that's not adding any additional work, but you're getting in front of all the local councils and mayors as a result. So opportunities like that, I think we can leverage. But yeah, I have a meeting next week with government relations. They did have some ideas already to bring forward, and I can kind of update you accordingly once it takes place.
This is my last comment, and I don't understand the background of politics and stuff. I think as an entity, as a police board, and we as a board need to be ourselves more proactive. I see this coming from the chair, Marnie, to the mayor and council of, Langley and Surrey and so on. That's personally, I think as a board, we need a greater presence to talk about what we are doing, because we're the representatives of the community. What worries me around TransLink is it gets watered down through some of the staffing discussions and so on. And I think, again, we even heard through the HATV, some of the things that are being done in terms of the opportunities related to these boards being more visible. And we should be known in our communities that we serve that we are active as a board. So with all due respect to TransLink, I think through our chair, I'd like to see our board be more proactive in getting this kind of information out. Your message is strong in that document, and it should come from you, obviously supported by the chief through the policing partners. But I would hope that's kind of the route that we're going to go, not kind of wait for somebody else. I mean, it's already dated information. It's June 2025.
Yeah.
So
Sure, we'll talk about that soon. Yeah, when Stephen has this meeting, we'll talk about that next week.
Can I
Yeah.
jump in, just piggybacking on George? There's also an opportunity, RCMP, the district commander has 2 meetings a year with the mayor's forum. So they're always looking for information. I used to always see it, to look for information that we can share with the mayor. Because all too often, transit, that'd be an opportunity for transit to really showcase what they're doing, with what they're doing on the system, how they're trying to improve, visibility, and also decrease crime or approach it. And I think that is a great part, because all the mayors and the CAs go, and we're always looking for, we had them in person, I had them in person and also online, and it, have all the mayors there at the table, and it's very interesting, so we could also showcase what Transit Police truly does and how they support all the local police agencies in Lower Mainland. Just a thought for consideration.
Yeah, it's a good one. Great, thank you. All right, and Georgie had also pulled G.
Well, and that's just the usual one of the, compliments for posting we get. Again, just being in the public session here, I just wanted to point out the first one, which was from a first responder that was in Richmond, and it was with regards to, the efforts of, a couple of officers. And this is where it says in the material that anyone can read, it says the officer stepped up. This is from the ambulance service. They coordinated with the bus, transported a child to the hospital and stroller on a bus, so on and so forth. And they said they even stayed with us at the hospital for a brief period of time to make sure we didn't need anything else. Their actions significantly reduced stress and potential complications for our crew. They demonstrated a strong commitment and collaboration in community care. I think that's what we always talk about. So again, through the chief, I think, training that obviously goes out there and demonstrating that, we always talk about enforcement, some of the tactics, but this is kind of the core of what we do around public safety and ensuring confidence in Metro Vancouver Transit Police, that they go beyond the normal things that are expected. And when it's a first responder taking the time to say that, I think it adds a little more weight.
Yeah. All right. Anything else from consent? All right, can I get a motion to accept DE and G? Thank you so much. All right, any public deliberations? Nope. All right, so let's go to the chief officer report. Over to you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So what I will begin with is FIFA. Certainly, yes, lots of preparation leading up into FIFA. Certainly, it's touched every part of our organization and a lot of work to get to where we are today. In preparation, we are prepared. We're looking forward to working with our other JPD partners out in community and to welcome the world in the games here to Vancouver. Secondly, I just touched at a high level just on our CSO program and the correspondence we received from the Police Services branch. And again, that correspondence really spoke to the quality of the content of the program, but also the relationship that's been built with the Police Services branch. We look forward to sharing that letter with the board for the next board meeting. Also our legal program, so a youth program focused on youth up to 15 years of age. We have 2 locations that we hold that in Vancouver and in Surrey. I'd like to recognize our other law enforcement partners who support in that, the Vancouver Police, Surrey Police Service, and RCMP. And it's one of, I've often shared a few programs where you see so many different law enforcement agencies gathered together in support of youth, and really a program that allows them to come in, have cultural learnings and leadership development. And we've got Acting Inspector Michelle Hansen here, her team doing a lot of work to bring that program and others in the room together. So thank you so much. I also want to note representation, the importance of it, and really say a thank you to board members being present for those graduation ceremonies. Again, a program we're very, very proud of. I will now turn it over, so we'll have 2 additional updates in the Chief Officer report. Administrative Deputy Bryce Graham will be presenting, and I'll begin first with Deputy Randy Fincham, and he'll be doing operations, and Bryce, you'll do admin today. Over to you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Great segue to FIFA. So I remember talking about this years away, months away, now it's days away, and now it's next week. So credit to Inspector Jeff Connor for all that great work that he's done with his team to get us to where we are today. So some of that I'll be reporting back on today, and some other highlights in operations. A lot of the work building up to FIFA has been twofold. Significant part of that is preparation with our police partners, providing scenarios, very complex training exercises to test the capabilities of first responders across the region. And then a recent one that we have done with our TransLink partners and all the operating companies in-house to test the resiliency of the systems within TransLink and within our operating company, and how we all work together should we have significant events that occur during FIFA. So one of the most recent exercises that we did was with those TransLink partners, and a very good exercise to show that we're ready. So the exercise we've done with policing partners show that we're ready with our policing partners, and as an enterprise, we're ready, like the chief said, to host the World for FIFA. So we're very excited about that. Part of this work, so on occasion, we do have individuals that choose, for various reasons, go into the guideway, and a lot of that is what we do for preparation and training. This period was not unlike others, where we've had a couple of significant occurrences. Essential for us is the public safety component, ensuring that we have officers responding with other partners to ensure the safety of those individuals in the guideway, making sure that they're looked after, they're cared for if criminal processes need to take place to happen, and then as well as looking at that system disruption to work with our partners within TransLink. So we've had a couple of those this period, and again, that tests our ability to do this work. So, a lot of the times when those events occur, we use those as training exercises for future encounters. So we've had a couple of those again. Lots of work this period, and I'll speak to some on the operational side and the investigative side, specific to Metrotown and the surrounding area. So these are the roadways, walkways, pathways in and surrounding Metrotown, the mall itself, and a lot of work happening there. And this work comes from public complaints, it comes from data and analysis trying to create the area. And then as well, work that we're doing with the Chiefs Community Council. We have a representative from Metrotown Mall that sits with the Chiefs Community Council. We can get direct feedback on what's happening at the mall and we can partner with some of that. So a few instances of vandalism, mischief and vandalism to the surrounding area of Metrotown that we're able to address, providing additional patrols, front facing patrols, as well as some investigative strategies in and around there to ensure that people using that station and dealing with some of the damage that's occurring there, some of the criminality around the mall, and I'll mention some of that on the investigative side as we come up. In this reporting period, we're very fortunate to have officers support the Vancouver Police Department with their Vaisakhi Parade. Traditionally one of the largest parades, so 50 to 100,000 people with Vaisakhi in Vancouver, so a big draw on resources in the city of Vancouver. Again, Metro Vancouver Transit is a very excited to partner with Vancouver Police in that event. And then following that was the Vaisakhi Parade in Surrey, where again, we provided officers to assist in policing in Surrey. The Surrey event is 500,000 people plus, one of the largest gatherings in the world for the Vaisakhi event. So a big draw on resources in Surrey, and we continue to partner with their policing agencies with those events. Our focus on this reporting period as well was working with individuals who find themselves traveling the system for extended periods of time. We focus with our officers on the perception of safety, and it's not always criminality, but there are situations where people may feel inherently uncomfortable or unsafe with certain individuals on the system. So what we've done is a focused effort on having our officers visible on the system, working at the SkyTrain stations. When those trains do come in, we'll engage with those individuals. And this isn't specifically on the criminal side, so this is providing mental health liaison support. It may be something where it's cold, so someone's traveling the system to stay warm, and we'll support those individuals. Our mental health liaison officers out there engaging, handing socks and providing care and referring to various support and assistance. So to make sure if there's a criminal element to it, we're dealing with the criminal side. And again, if there's support that's needed, we'll provide that support for the individual. Project Trident, so this is the investigative part of the Metrotown piece that I was speaking to. So partnering with our police agencies in Burnaby, the Combined Force Special Enforcement Unit, and various policing partners, and in-house our community engagement team, our targeted law enforcement team, our investigative teams, really focusing on criminality in and around that mall. We were fortunate again to get funding through the provincial government for this project, dedicated focus days specifically dealing with violent activities in and around Metrotown, which resulted in a significant number of seizures of a large quantity of drugs and stolen property, as well as holding offenders accountable with various arrests that were put forward to charges to the Crown Council. Our crime analysis units, or our criminal analysts, this is our gateway to the repeat violent offender program. So specifically what I'm referring to on the investigative side, our crime analysts work very closely with courts, with Crown, with probations, and this is where a lot of our focus is on repeat violent offenders. So our crime analysts work very hard to identify individuals on the system who we're dealing with on a repeat basis. If they meet the criteria for that program, that's our interest into the system, where we can have all this concentrated effort on those individuals to remove violent offenders from the system. So again, in this period, working with our analysts to identify those individuals, hold them accountable, put them forward to the Reboy program, and have the focus of those individuals on the side. So that again. We have created a second forensic video analyst position. So we've spoken with the board a number of times about the increased strain in the system as we introduce more video into the environment. So this is community-based video. Everybody has a cell phone, and as, you know, we progress down the road and we look at body-worn cameras and the future of policing, there's always going to be that increase in on that side. So, again, expanding the analyst position to include that second position so we can support that addition of video has been essential for us. Our neighborhood police officers very engaged in the school. So the chief mentioned the Blue Eagles program last night. The board members who were there last night were able to experience some of that work that our neighborhood police officers or our community engagement team does on a regular basis. And again, throughout this period, heavy presence in the schools working with the kids. A number of safe spaces pop-ups occurring in April of this year. So focusing on some of our busier areas, so New Westminster, Burquitlam stations, and engaging with the public and providing that safe experience, being very visible and engaging with the public. As mentioned earlier, a mental health liaison officer, a number of very significant engagements, over 8 people directly referred to health services, where that mental health liaison officer is engaged with an individual in crisis, referred them to support systems and community and getting them care. And that lone officer, again, another 45 engagements dealing with individuals providing care within the system. Our CSO program that the chief had mentioned. So our class that graduated in May are out there now. So great to see them out there, high physical presence out in the community. And again, our class 6 group is now going out on their SWAT training next week. So they're around the building today, very excited. We were able to meet with them yesterday and have some really good conversations about where they're going. So they're very excited to hit the street next week, and they're very excited to get into the classroom. So we're looking forward to seeing them out there. And with the CSO program, we're looking at following recommendations from an independent review of that program. And like the chief mentioned earlier, looking forward to looking at expanding that program and following a lot of that great work that's going on. And then the last thing I'll comment on is our targeted mobile enforcement team. A lot of work this period working on unsafe vehicles, commercial vehicles, stunt driving, impaired driving, so removing dangerous drivers off the roadway, and at times removing vehicles off the roadway to make it a safer place for everybody, including the transit system. I'll pass it back to you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. And just wanted to go back to the 2025, just report back to community. And there's that are operational priorities. One I want to touch about that Deputy Fincham touched on is just helping vulnerable people in crises. And some of the results in there we spoke about quarterly, but I just do want to speak to mental health referrals last year, up 63% in the number of referrals. So important making those connections, as well as that decrease of 18% in terms of our mental health and again, really highlighting that work that's being done out there by our mental health liaison officer and others, just making those connections in an area we continue to work and build. I'll turn it over now to Deputy Bryce Graham for the
I'll probably stick on the theme of FIFA. It is 6 days away now. I think that'll be a common trend for this reporting period. So in preparation for FIFA, all frontline police officers receive training on crowd dynamics to ensure they're prepared for the significant crowds that we expect here during FIFA. We also did training with our communication center, and they received some operational readiness training in preparation for the tournament, while focusing on suspicious practice protocols and introducing our new quick response team and providing them information on various zones, layouts, and what the FIFA tournament will look like for their perspective. I also just want to bring to attention this year's 2026 Women Law Enforcement Conference, which we sent a fair amount of employees to. They had a keynote speaker, Lana Starchuk, who was speaking on specialized resilience strategy. So continuing to support our employees in that manner. Turning over to our recruiting team, in May we sent 10 new police recruits to the JIBC, so that's our largest recruit class ever. So I just want to bring some attention to our recruiting section on that one. Significant amount of work that went into that. We expect them to graduate in March of 2027, but also want to recognize the JI and all the work that they've done to increase capacity in order for that to happen for ourselves and many other departments. So 10 brand new recruits, pretty significant on our end. Continuing with some work that we're doing in HR, this fall we'll have a promotional process looking at promotions in the sergeant, staff sergeant, inspector rank. In order to have folks ready, we've been working pretty hard this quarter to do some readiness for promotion courses and workshops for our folks. So that work's already begun as we get ready for promotions here in the fall. We've also, our people and culture team has also been working with our recruiting team, and we're preparing, as an organization for a new human resource system. And also underway with that work is looking to modernize our recruiting process. So we're looking to bring in a process and review and refine our current practices and look at one that's very focused on the applicant. Historically in policing, you do attend and receive large packages, but we're looking to kind of refine the process internally for our CSOs that are looking to apply, but also for others, to making it much more easier, much more electronic, and a more refined process that really kind of focuses on them. And finally, I'll just wrap up again with FIFA and a bunch of work that we've done on the technology and innovation side. So we've done significant amount of work on our technology side to support some key initiatives and working with our partners, specifically the RCMP and the Vancouver Police. We've done a lot of work on the technology side to get some federated services that'll help us both for FIFA, help us communicate with our various dock systems and partners and JPDs. We've stood up a lot of internal work, so I do want to recognize our internal team. Other agencies over this last little period have, got it done by bringing in third parties or paying for third-party softwares. We developed a lot of stuff in-house, did a lot of different stuff in-house with our team, which is very cost efficient, as well as allowing our team to grow. So a ton of work being done for us to be ready, for us to be able to communicate, records keep, have everything saved, information, and be able to organize with our partners to know where our resources are and how we can deploy and make sure that we're ready for this tournament. So a big lift by our technology team on that front. I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. That concludes our chief officer update, and we'll open, should you have any questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Great. Thank you for your report. My question is related to the mental health report that you presented. I certainly really appreciate the fact that we are focusing on mental health and we have a mental health liaison. And just to my experience in the healthcare system, we live in such a complicated world, and I just want to ensure that we're proactive. So the question I have is that, two questions. The first question is that, how many mental health liaisons do we have? And then the second question is that there are participants that go through our transit system that may not be defined as mental health, but they need requirements of like a social worker element. So how do we deal with that population? Because people do use them sometimes that they're not perceived not safety. So two elements, how many mental health liaisons do we have, and then how do we deal with those that require a social worker element to help them in their situation?
Sure. I guess I'll start by saying we have all of our officers that are out there on a daily basis engaging in mental health related work. So a lot of it is by sheer presence on the system. We know we have a large population. We have 300 million boarding passengers per year traveling on the system, and a significant part of that population is individuals who need additional support for a variety of reasons. So all of our frontline officers receive training in mental health care and recognition and how we can safely apprehend individuals and deliver them to care, and those officers working out there on a daily basis. Currently, we have one dedicated mental health liaison person in that role that takes the leadership role in reviewing files, providing follow-up support, connecting those individuals who are identified throughout the system by our many officers, whether it's CSOs or sworn members, even some investigative follow-up. We have one officer who's dedicated to ensuring that those follow-up happen and connected care when they need it, and we're working with the rest of those officers. And to your point, a lot of the work we do is specific to mental health. We do look at individuals who tend to have very complex concerns, whether it's mental health, substance use, homelessness. There's various forms of support community who we try and engage with on a daily basis. It may be to provide housing, it may be to refer to social services, it may be referred to healthcare to deal with those complex needs. And some of those are all three happening at the same time, and that makes it very, very complex and challenging. A lot of that work as well is supported by work that's happening within TransLink, with supports within TransLink in that same field. And now with that mental health liaison officer, building a lot of supports in the community with partnerships in advance. So not waiting until an individual is in crisis. We have people and groups who we know we can rely on to help support us with those individuals, and then building those relationships early and engaging with them on a regular basis to keep those streams continue.
maybe just quickly a follow-up question on that. So when your mental health liaison is not on shift, how do we manage that? Because there's 24 hours and 12 hours or whatever. So how do we balance the other 12 hours, and how do we ensure there's that continuity of service requirement?
No, that's a good question. So with our system, how we have frontline officers that support supervisors through a watch commander that has access to all those supports as well. A lot of that work we're referring to after hours dealing with individuals in crisis. We're a 24-hour service. Our healthcare providers are a 24-hour service. So if there are those individuals in need of complex crisis response care, then we have that ability to work with all for them to care. If we find those individuals in a position where that they're in need of that immediate support, they're endangering themselves or others, or we just can't wait until we can follow up. We do have the opportunity, ability to wait for follow-up until, say, the next week, because we believe that person can be referred to supports or look after themselves, or they have other supports in place until that time, then we may wait. But if there's an individual out there that's in crisis right now, then with our system, we have the ability to flag and track those individuals and get care right away with our health.
Additionally, with our jurisdictional police partners, we have close connections as well, many of them with specialized units, and we would be referring as well.
Thank you.
Sure, Carolina.
Yeah, thank you all for your reports. I just want to ask, and I appreciate, I want to laud the focus on officer visibility and this, and just that attention to it and the initiative you're putting towards that. Time and time, we've had feedback through public perception safety surveys around visibility, and so it's really key to how people feel and experience, transit when they're using it. I'm wondering if we have sort of thoughts on how we capture the change, a potential change in how people are perceiving officer visibility. I know we continue to run public safety surveys and whatnot, but given this change, I'm just wondering if there's an attention to how we might capture that impact.
I know where you're going to go.
Yeah, I'm looking at, sorry, I'm looking at Stephen, but sorry.
So what I'll say on a high level is, looking at tracking all those different engagements, through KPI, and later on this morning, we'll be talking about our strategic plan, and I think that's going to be, that'll be our next three-year plan, and a real opportunity as well to be able to really define KPIs, look at tracking them. Even in our daily duty report, we've enhanced our tracking within that, very much focused, on looking at increased visibility and being able to track in a much more, defined manner the visibility that is out there on the system. And lots of examples in the chief officer update that were provided. Safe Spaces was one of the initiatives that was referenced, and really looking at building that community policing model, continuing that frontline presence.
Any other questions? Sure, George.
Just a question on the CSO program, because it was a pilot program. And there was an outside third party that was doing a report. And is that coming to us? Because it seems like we've got the minister's approval before the board has even approved the CSO program, if I'm correct in my thinking. Like, it comes to us as a board to decide is the way that I thought this was working. So two questions. One was timing on that. And so we can have a full discussion. I'm very supportive of the CSO program, which leads to the second question, is that I believe we might have been the second of the agencies with BPD doing CSOs. And then I think we were maybe the second group. And now I know Surrey's doing it and others. The challenge then going forward is, if this has been so successful, what is the impact on transit police trying to attract and retain our CSOs, given the fact that there's going to be more competition for those types of individuals? What's our unique selling proposition to encourage CSOs especially to join us rather than join Surrey or Delta or something?
So I guess I'll begin with the first part. So we've continued to update the board on the progression of the CSO program. As we are aware, there was one of the requirements of the CSO program was an independent evaluation. That evaluation has been completed. We've updated the report on those 27 recommendations. Simultaneously, there was a training curriculum as well related that had to be one of the requirements that was sent to the province. That was forwarded on with the board's awareness. In the interim, the province has been reviewing that material. On June 3rd, we received that letter. We are scheduled in Q3 of this year to provide the board with further updates on those 27 recommendations and progress with them. So maybe to your second question, just our unique, value proposition and what we bring. Absolutely. If you look at transit police contract members, for example, we were one of the first agencies to implement and utilize. There's been other agencies, some formation of, community safety officer programs. We're particularly proud of our program itself. And our members themselves are often the greatest ambassadors. We've seen that, second tier and that ability of progression in the organization. And, for us at Transit Police, we're going to do exactly what we continue to do is, be that employer of choice, continue to brand, our program, share as the board kind of raises opportunities to increase the profile of our organization, and move that program forward. And, for public and for the board, but I really want to go back to just the magnitude of the community safety officer program, the development of it, the implementation, and, we see in the reports to the community just the impact that those officers are having out there, and very proud of the program and the individuals in it.
Chief, perhaps I could offer a comment too. Interestingly enough, in the last go around of some applicants we got, the program itself is actually, it's developed its own kind of storm, if you will, because we've actually had a couple of people that have come in and made an application for the CSO program that would have otherwise been suitable candidates for a recruit program, but have said, I want to start here. This is so, and that's just the feedback that the program has generated, both, as the Chief has said, from the caliber of the training to the feedback from the people that have graduated from the CSO program and being out there. We also include CSOs in all of our recruiting sessions. In fact, we had one of our largest recruiting sessions just a week ago, this past Sunday, in this very room, and we had nearly 60 people show up for that. So that's very encouraging, and I think it's reflective in our applications as well. So yeah, it's taken on a bit of a life of its own, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I just want one point. I just want to go to Director Chan's kind of comment earlier about 95% of authorized strengths, and just to anchor back on, you look at that, with the Broadway expansion, SkyTrain, we've had to increase by +20 in authorized strength over the past few years. And to look at that numbers being actualized in preparation, and the work that's been done, by the recruiting team and so many others, I think it's a really good statistic to bring forward, and thanks for highlighting that.
Can I just mention one thing? It was a pilot program for us, but for the province, it wasn't set up as a pilot program. So they set it up to continue. So they're kind of looking at it now to go forward. It's sort of standard. For us, it's more, how do we make it better? How do we improve on it? And so that pilot sort of label was really our own. It doesn't affect the continuation of the program for the province's perspective.
With regards to the 95% occupancy rate, or compared to your 5% is, vacant, you want to staff it. That's an extremely high percentage. It's probably unparalleled in the RCMP and other agencies as well. When you look at the people are pushing out to get good police officers back into their fold. But I also think it goes to the leadership team and everybody that's working in this organization. Because if you have a healthy organization and everybody's rowing in the same direction, they may not always like the results, but if they know that they're cared for, that they're listened to, and that they have opportunities, whether it's the CSO program to jump into becoming a full-fledged police officer, that's how you retain people. Because when there's discord and our employees are unhappy, which, and I've seen it, in this role, and you have to look at the senior management team, hey, is there anything we could do different? You know, what's working, what's not working? And I'm a really hard person, I don't, with regards to giving accolades, I don't give them loosely. And like I said, I've been on this board, my second time on this board, and I am so impressed by everybody on the team chair and also the police force itself, the care and the dedication, on what you're trying to do, you know, police officer safety, but public safety writ large. And it really is, something to behold, actually, because I have, I'm so thankful to everyone and all of your teams. That 5% vacancy pattern, that's nothing. And, when you look at other people that get 50%, you're struggling, and I think it's a testament to everybody here, because you're in operations and everyone was in operations at one time, now we're on the back end, but the back end is so important to keep all of our employees, CMs, I don't know if there's no public servants here, but CMs and, members, and then, he's written, direction, gonna do this, many masters, and try to put it all together and make it symbiotic.
Thanks, Mary. Can I just ask? Sure. Sorry, I know we're trying to move on, but I just wanted to say, Oscar, I really appreciate that comment and that nuance around the pilot for us, and that leads me to a question around the independent evaluation. Was that us taking that on our own, or was that a requirement from the province?
I'll let Oscar respond, but I'm going to say both.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I think it's a really important thing to do either way.
We should do.
We don't want to go into the long tortured history of.
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, I don't want to go. PTSD.
You set up a 2-hour
No.
when we first rolled
Yeah.
out, we set it up as a pilot program so that we could
Yeah.
follow the same process other police agencies have done,
Yeah.
but in some very good conversations with the province, and how they were setting it up legislatively, we didn't want that to be holding up the program. We wanted the legislation, the regulations that they set up to be permanent. So we advised them that it would be a pilot, and we would be letting them know what the results would be, but that, from their perspective, and they would want to know what the curriculum, as the chief had said, and so on. And of course, the powers of the CSOs, we'd like to go back to them at some point and review the powers of the CSOs. Now that we've had them working for 3 years, there's a few things we'd like to have them address, potentially, because it's a public safety improvements for us. But we all agreed that, yes, they would, they would sort of provide support and approval in principle to go forward, but we would be working from our own sort of pilot recommendations and improving, and of course we'll keep them apprised of it, but it's not a condition of going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, you wanted to talk for a few minutes?
Yeah, if we could please bring up presentation. So I am going to turn over to Deputy Randy Fincham, but I wanted to bring to the board's attention, we sent it in written correspondence, but the public as well. There was a media article that was in De Facto on May 11th, and the article talked about our contact with the CBSA and the Canadian Border Service Agency. And in the article, it relayed some concerns around, transit police reach out to the CBSA. So with that article, we've done a detailed review. We've done extensive community engagement, and we want to bring to the board at this first opportunity that we have with all of you to share a bit more about the article and the progress to date on that. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, I'll talk about a little bit history where this came from. We believe that everybody traveling with this, regardless of origin, should feel safe. They shouldn't be in fear of dealing with our officers, with their CSOs, or any other police force for that reason. And this is what we're going to talk about today. We'll talk also a little bit about the dangers of data, wording and language that's used as well. We'll talk about that. We're always striving to do better, so we take these opportunities when these are brought to our attention through various means, how we can shore up our system, how we can improve policy if need be, how we can look at procedures which are required today, and how we can use events like this to do better as an organization and prove how we do some of our work. So this is an article, like the chief mentioned. De Facto News is an independent news outlet. It's a writer co-op out of Victoria. It launched in May of this year, and they focus on police and government. So this is one of the introductory articles, and there's a couple articles here that we'll talk about, and this relates back to an article that was, or an event that took place in 2013 that we'll discuss as well. So just to summarize the article for you, it brings up a couple of key events. So this is an inquiry with the CBSA through a Freedom of Information request asking for contact between falsely based in the Lower Mainland and CBSA as it relates to immigration files. So in that information provided by CBSA, there was 91 times January through October of 2024 where Metro Vancouver Transit Police contacted the CBSA. With that, was an additional FOI that came, or two FOIs, Freedom of Information requests that came to our team on Oscar's side, on the FOI side. Specifically, this is where the language gets interesting. We're specifically asking for events that were recorded in the DER. So from that, there was 8 calls in the DER, and then we voluntarily provided 8 additional calls that were tracked within Prime. So our records information management environment, which is our recording system that we use throughout the province. So that data was provided by us. So with that, the author determined that we were out of policy because we weren't following, or not following, I should say, or the wording used by the author is actually policy. We believe that the author was using the SOP that we have that we'll talk about, the guiding reasons behind it. So that this is, again, dangers in the details with the word policy being used, and that we were out of compliance with what was happening with our own policy. I'm going to use that term differently. And that was 90% of the time it was cited. So this raised some major alarms for us, because obviously very concerning to the U.S. board. If we're out of policy, then why are we out of policy and what's happening with that? So it's important to look at the data. So if you focus specifically on 2024, so the beginning of the year, at the end of October, there was 91 contacts with CBSA. In context, in 2024, we had 404 million boardings on the system. So this was one CBSA contact for every 4.5 million boardings on the system that this author is referring when they came up with this estimate. And actually, the author in the article itself refers to 200 million boardings within that article for the data, which is actually an incorrect number. Even that number of 200 million is 2.2 million boardings with one contact to CBSA, with all the interactions we have with the public. So this relates back to the 2013 article, and I'll summarize this article. This is a very tragic event that originated with us in Transit Police, and then I'll summarize some of that. So this was a 42-year-old Mexican national who was in Vancouver, who was on the system at Main Street Central Station, that was checked by one of our officers to provide proof of payment, and the individual provided their name, and there was an inability to confirm the identity of that individual to make sure that fair infraction notice was issued to the correct person. So it wasn't being, it was given to someone else, it was truly being given to the person who was being checked. So with that, a call was made to the CBSA because of the belief by the officer that the Spanish accent might provide some avenues to identify who that person was, and the CBSA was a step in that process to confirm who that person was. CBSA advised that there was an enforceable immigration removal order in place, and that individual was apprehended based on that warrant of arrest for the individual under immigration. That person was referred to CBSA custody, and very tragically, on December 24th, that individual took their own life while being in cells at the Vancouver Airport, so held for an extended period of time. So a very tragic event that came out of this December 1st contact. So this put a lot of issues in place. So there was a review done. So the coroner's inquest happened. The policing side, so it was determined that policing powers can trigger this contact, which was a fair infraction notice that triggered a contact to CBSA, which was the chain of events that started this. And then there was a couple specific recommendations for the coroner's inquest, specific to the environment itself. Oversight in a privatized facility at the Vancouver Airport, which was identified as a concern, and then as well as gaps in mental health protection. So to your comment earlier about mental health supports in the system, we've come a long way since 2013, how we care for individuals who are in mental health support. So this is a very busy slide, but what I want to highlight here is these are steps that have been taken since 2013 to address what happened in this specific event. So a lot of work done, and there's individuals in this room who will recognize things for city initiatives in the city of Vancouver, and so the region that we participated in other state agencies. Some agencies refer to access without fear. And this is where we started to change how we police, that we believe that everybody should have access to health supports, community supports, regardless of where they originate from. A lot of work done for the coroner's inquest, a lot of work done within Canada and nationally to look at best practices, internationally best practices. You'll see in 2015 development of our standard operating procedures, and another one that we'll talk about is ending the MOU that we signed in 2007 with the CBSA, and I'll talk about that as well. So that's changed. And then you'll see updates in the SOP and how we share this with our members. So it's ongoing education with our frontline officers and our supervisors as to how we proceed with these events. So a lot of work taking place from that event. One of the ones that came out of here is a flow chart. Don't worry about the flow chart, it's very small, but I'll summarize what our standard operating procedure is for you. But this is the flow chart for officers that was shared as a result of that to show them get A's and B's and the steps and ways to ensure that we're following that standard operating procedure. And I'll walk you through that as well. This is a bulletin that mirrors the initial bulletin shared with our members, and then subsequent bulletins that have gone out. So Inspector Jeff Connor will address this with our frontline operational members and supervisors, and this again identifies what our standard operating procedure is to remind our frontline officers. And again, we'll provide a reminder as to why we're letting them know again about this when events come up. So use this as ongoing going forward. Again, I'll summarize this so you don't need to read these super small wording. So I'm going to summarize the standard operating procedure for you. So when we have a fair infraction notice, somebody fails to produce payment on the system within a fair pay zone, we are not able to contact the CBSA to confirm identity. That's not how we follow our process. There must be something above and beyond that fair infraction notice that will cause us to call the CBSA. And this is when we enter down the criminal path of obstruction, where somebody legally on reasonable grounds, someone's providing false information, and we're attempting to confirm identity. And there's a lot of steps before that we'll use. We'll run them through the police database, contact people to verify who they are. We'll use marks, scars, and tattoos. We'll use probation contacts. We'll go through a lot of steps to identify who this person is before we contact the CBSA in a criminal matter. Like I said, we have to exhaust all these other avenues. The officer will document that in their notes. They will contact their supervisor. And if this advances above and beyond that fair infraction notice and pure identification of the individual, then that member writes a general occurrence report regarding crime. And this is where the crime language comes in. It's very important when we look at a writer asking for DER information, where they weren't asking for crime information, they were asking for the wrong thing. So we weren't able to provide that information because they weren't asking for the right information for us to justify those 91 contacts. So this is where crime becomes important. Again, the supervisor will approve that. They will document that in their notes, and they'll record that interaction in CAD as per the SOP. Again, the language of recording that in CAD is very important because that author didn't ask for CAD data. So that, again, is not asking for the correct information for the 91 offenses. And this is where we talk about how we can be better as an organization. So that CAD data is very important, and we had some learnings in CAD as well. We'll talk about that. So this is where all the sort of talked about that freedom of information request versus our standard operating procedure, which caused some challenges. So again, we talked about the CBSA FOI and transit police calls, being the number of 91. The daily duty report only identified 8 of those events because they were asking for something other than what we were tracking requirements to them. So that was our first red flag. The second one is we voluntarily provided crime files. We acknowledge that this isn't all recorded in there, but remember, we only recorded in crime if it goes above and beyond a fair infraction notice, so a criminal element. So we had 8 criminal elements of the 91 that were recorded in crime, so I gave it to 11. And then that's when we started looking at how we're recording this information in CAD. And what we determined in CAD is our computer automated dispatch system, or computer-aided dispatch system, doesn't allow the word tracking for us in CAD to do this appropriately. And this is where we, again, need to do better. So with that, we did a review of all this. Like I said, the CAD and the DDRs are not an efficient or reliable way that we can track that data for this purpose. So that didn't provide us with the environment in that SOP, although everything within that SOP was checks and balances and supervisory oversight to make sure we were doing this. That wasn't an effective manner to do this in word searches in CAD. Private reports, and this is work being done by Beth on our side and Inspector Jeff Connor and other experts in the room providing input, that our records management environment in Prime provides a better environment for all cases because we were able to track those 8 events. So shifting and going to Prime as a reporting mechanism to ensure that we have those checks and balances in place, we can track this more appropriately. Again, educating and training our frontline officers. That last bulletin that you see that we put out, that bulletin was, shared with the members recently, and that's been shared a couple of times. And then as well as adding compliance reviews. So looking annually at the data provided by CBSA in regard to contacts with CBSA and ensuring that our data matches, and that would be our following up for travel going forward. Or as directed by the chief. So if we need to do that through the board on a more frequent basis, or that changes, then we can do that through the chief. And then ongoing feedback from our community groups. So we were able to talk briefly with our community council this week about this. So we have representatives from the immigration community, and again, a commitment to follow up with them again after we spoke to the board, and reporting back to them on directions from the board and where we've gone and steps. And we were not the only agency identified in this. Like I said, this was an inquiry about all police agencies in the Lower Mainland. All agencies, and this is one where they also cited Vancouver, their data was up as well. And this is just the environment we have as we shift in community, and we've got a lot of new individuals arriving in the community or into the country, and we will need a pretty large immigrant population of the system. But like I said, our message to our riders is that they should be able to ride that system without being fear on the system, fear of our officers or fear of any contact with CBSA, and that's our commitment. And I'll turn it back to the chief.
No, thank you. I will do a summary at the end, but maybe open if there's any questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I wanted to start just by saying thank you for a very speedy and comprehensive response to an inquiry from myself and potentially others on the board related to the article, so I did want to thank you for that. A couple things stood out for me in it. You've got in that very busy slide, like the detailed slide, there's 5 years between, so there's a flurry of response in 2013, which makes, like right after the 2013 death, which makes sense, and you can see how that would happen. But then 5 years between 2015 and 2020, and then 4 years between 2020 and 2024. So it feels like a mechanism that allows for more regular review of this would seem appropriate. And I know it's evolving and you're identifying gaps, but I'm curious about some of the ways you're looking at that.
Sure. So when you look at the gap in this response or what we've done, there were really no red flags that came up. It wasn't brought to our attention that this wasn't being followed up on by supervisors, that people weren't following the standard operating procedures. Nothing to identify that the steps identified in the SOP for 2015 weren't taking place, so those checks and balances were there. And then as it was brought to our attention, we'd have a red flag that there was a misstep or something didn't happen as it should. We would assess what it was that happened, and then how we could address that with individual officers and how as an organization we can share that as an educational piece with those officers. So all these steps here where you see, yes, you're correct, there was a lot of build up in 2013, 2015 to we entered a state of, okay, we're following the SOP and there was no major red flags. And then what you'll see as we go through to 2024, 2026, we started to see incidents happen. We started to look at individual events and address them as individual events. We didn't address it as a data analysis problem where it wasn't that we weren't doing compliance checks. We didn't have a mechanism in place to assure that we were in compliance with that standard operating procedure. Now what we did was that process was not an error process, which was using that computer-aided dispatch data to do the analysis. We didn't do on a regular basis through a word search. So working with Stephen and his team and working with various subject matter experts and Inspector Connor in plant operations and looking at it and going, okay, is there a better mechanism that we can use to ensure that we use audits on our own and proactive audits? And that was one of the things that came out of this is our ability to do proactive audits. And then looking at that audit process and doing it annually to make sure that we're doing this, we're keeping it on a frequent basis, that it's constantly a red flag for us that, okay, here's what we've seen the error, and moving forward, we eliminate the chances that error is going to happen again. And that's a proactive audit process on our side, not waiting for an event to come up and give a red flag to us. So we're going to own this in advance.
That's great. Okay, that makes tons of sense. Thank you. And the community council, so that opportunity exists as well. So I guess like it seems obvious, but I feel like I need to ask it, especially in light of FIFA. If someone has a fare infraction and gives ID from another country, they should, like as I understand, there should be no fear of them calling. You would not call CBSA. There's tons of people from other countries that travel the system, both resident, non-resident, and all that happens is they get a fare infraction ticket with their whatever the country, whatever their address is, wherever they're from. That's correct.
You're 100% correct. Once we have the ability to confirm identity through viable means, which would be identification or other means that we can use, once that happens, that person's issued a fair infraction notice. If they're in a fair pay zone and they can't provide proof of payment, and then they continue on. There's no further process from that, and that ends that process.
And if for some reason they didn't have ID, which happens when you're in precarious circumstances, the standard, the SOP indicates that you would call a relative or an employee.
You can actually contact an individual, and there's ways and verbiage and language that we speak to somebody that be reassured that with open-ended information and that's not providing information, that someone can confirm who that person is for that fair infraction.
It's probably getting that information out to individuals in that circumstance. That is our challenge.
That's correct. And with this work is making sure our officers keep that continuous reminder as to this is what that procedure is. And to your point, with FIFA coming up, we expect a lot of international hours with FIFA. The timing for this is not at all rough. We do have a large immigrant population daily to those who from work or wherever people are choosing to go. People who we deal with on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Just a quick question on sort of the applicability of what you've just learned through this particular issue to other issues. So just wondering if, like, with the gap in the process with respect to data and CADs, are there other like SOPs or other instances where this could also be an issue that you're looking into as well?
I'm going to throw this one to my esteemed colleague. So a lot of the work happening in data and analytics, Deputy Graham is the realm of expertise in his team. So I'm going to defer to Bryce about data analytics and what we're doing on it.
Yeah, so kind of two-pronged answer to this one. One is we are currently under data analytics study, and I believe in the closed portion, I've got an update on that, so I'll in the closed portion. The other thing is all our policies have a regular review periods that are built in, and they are constantly being reviewed and revised, and as those come up, we're doing all that assessment all the time. So, you know, continually, every month, every week, as those applicable policies come up, they are being reviewed, they are being refreshed, and changes are being made.
And I'll just build on that. So, you know, the policies are looked at sort of on that yearly review basis. And, you know, I think what this says to us is, you know, that opportunity to, you know, review, always look at kind of different lenses and important steps, you know, as we move forward out of this is obviously changing the procedures policy in this instance. That audit component to ensure that we are having compliance is going to be important. And then, you know, Director Reimer kind of touched on that back end, which, you know, we can fix a process, but there's also some really important content in this article about the community and the impact, not just, you know, related to our checks, but how they feel on the transit system. And I referenced earlier, you know, with our Transit Police Chiefs Community Council starting that important conversation last week. So we're bringing back, you know, this article to them. We're bringing back the community feedback, having some discussions around that, and then looking how do we really build relationships and continue to build on relationships, you know, with various groups within community who do have that precarious status. That's an opportunity for us.
Yeah, firstly, appreciate the level of depth around the analysis and the response here. So thank you for that, and thank you for the presentation. I've got one question and perhaps one comment. Just so one, I think I understand the response in terms of, hey, we need to look at the data differently. That's going to help us audit ourselves better on this SOP going forward. Are there other actions that should be taken specifically around this SOP that are ensuring that we're in compliance and are in compliance with this SOP? Like, what's the next step from that perspective?
I was going to say, part of it is, you know, how we analyze the data. Part of this with the SOP is actually changing the SOP where we hold that data. So we're actually going to hold that data in a warehouse that as we have more access, we can control it. We can provide codes that will direct us to that information. So this article itself isn't necessarily saying that we're out of compliance 90% of the time. It's saying that we are unable to track compliance 90% of the time based on where that data was held.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for this one to say is that we need to change where we're holding that information, so we can change our ability to track and search that with data analytics, to pull that information out to ensure that we're following our own procedures. That's part of it. And then the other side is the ongoing training with our members. There's a lot of work that happens with Inspector Henry's team on the training side, where throughout the year we're training content. A lot of that is responsive to what we experience, and then flagging what we need to further train our members in and where we see those gaps. So again, this was a gap that was brought to our attention, which could be identified, put out through a bulletin in the immediate time frame, to provide direct information to our frontline members, and then as well, that will form future content when we do training with our NCOs upcoming supervisor training. So again, we can check this off to make sure that we have those checks and balances in place.
Understood. And just maybe to Detroit, first step is we actually need to figure out whether we're in compliance or not, then take action.
Correct.
You know, and the second one, just a comment, and I appreciate, you know, the commitment of, hey, anybody can be on the transit system regardless of status. Just, you know, perhaps, you know, my 2 cents or perspective. I can very easily imagine a scenario where somebody who's traveling without status, who has a fare infraction, who's unwilling to provide identification because they're not aware of our commitment for them to safely travel. You know, hey, you're trying to, you know, a police officer is trying to identify me. I don't really know for what purpose. I don't understand that, hey, this may impact my status in the country or my ability to remain in the country. And I wonder if there's anything in the SOP around that, or training around that, or how our officers on the front lines might deal with situations from that perspective.
Yeah, I looked at, and I can address this in my own experience. Many times I would deal with an individual for infractions, say it's speeding, say it's whatever it is. We get to the point where the individual will want to identify themselves. Sometimes that conversation is, if we're looking at a ticket, if I can review you are, give you this ticket, you can continue on to work wherever you're going. Yeah. I'm not looking on an advanced criminal process. I'm not looking to run your name for warrants. I'm looking for who you are, because I'm required to identify you, so I can issue this violation ticket, so I can ensure I'm giving this ticket to the right person and not holding someone else accountable for this situation. So a lot of times with our officers, that's one of the steps in that process, to reassure them that we're dealing with a violation ticket. We're not looking for immigration status. We're not looking for if you're wanted on a homicide file. And we may get to that if it gets to that point. There's some indicators that there's advanced criminality. There's some other, you know, purpose that's the purpose between that. But a lot of the work we do up with our officers, and, you know, to shorten the conversation, even the training that we do with our community safety officers, with scenario training that took place in the last couple of weeks, is training them with how to engage with the public and encourage the public, and working through this as a partnership and saying, hey, you want to get somewhere, I want to get somewhere, I want to get to the truth, I want to issue this ticket, you want to go to work where you're going, let's get this done and be on with it, and let's move on. So it's ongoing training with our officers is part of that.
And, you know, 3 parts is additional training will be provided, CSO program. We have training when people come from KIBC into the agency, and certainly as addressed to them.
Appreciate the diligence with which you guys are approaching the issue.
That's great, and certainly interested in how the audit go forward, and the board is obviously interested in that information. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Two quick questions. The bar graph only goes up to 2024, so the question is, do we have 2025 numbers for last year? And then I have a second question.
But I actually requested this data from Steven, and I was actually looking for the data up to 2024 in support of the article. So I didn't ask Steven actually for the 2025 data. The 2025 data is accessible, and then with our report back to the board, it will include available data. Well, there'll be a lag with that data as we go through the reporting system and it goes to readers. So there'll always be a lag in that system, but we will be able to provide the previous year's data, which will include 2025.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, so if we were to guess, it's probably not going to be any higher than 2024, or you're just don't know?
I wouldn't want to hold myself to that, from that data.
Okay, you said.
I go based on historical data, based on, you know, visibility of officers, engagements. There's no flag that I've seen that would lead easily, but we have a significant increase from the 2024 numbers to 2025. Yeah. But we can quite easily get that data for you.
Sure.
and perhaps just to comment on that, we will absolutely obtain that data, provide the 2025 data. And then I say this in no way to mitigate the conversation here, but, you know, I just do want to mention to the board, you know, those numbers do have an increase as we look into 2023 and certainly 2024, an increase of 24 CSOs as well as 20 frontline officers as well. So, you know, always with data, there's, you know, kind of ratios within, but we will provide that 2025 data for you.
Yeah, great. You're also seeing COVID numbers for 2020, 2021, so these riders are bringing face-to-face contact. So some of the uptick from 2021, 22, 23, you're seeing a resuming of ridership and face-to-face encounters with community,
Yeah, you have to look at the data, you know, more than just isolated. And we just talked about that, like, you'll get an increase in ridership, you know, come COVID times, but we're also probably looking at an overall increase in fair enforcement, right? So we need to put this in context. If we just isolate this data, we're not doing ourselves any favor or justice. Like, we really need to make sure that it's contextually looked at.
And this speaks to the data and analytics project we're doing as well, and the importance of having access to real-time data. And I see, Steve, and you have a comment as well.
Yeah, well, this is the data that was provided by CBSA, and I reached out to the CBSA the same week that this article came out to ask for both the 2025 data as well as more detail in terms of the breakout of each of those years. So we're still waiting on that information. Once we receive it from CBSA, we can provide it to the board.
One of the key things to note as well, and it started with the previous conversation where we talked about CSO complaints, officer complaints, and this was mentioned by one of the board members as well, that when we have increased contacts with the public for fair enforcement or various situations, we will have higher report of complaints. Individuals are not happy with their services for riding. So we do, to Deputy Grant's comment, we do expect the more engagement we have, the more violation tickets we issue, the more contacts we're going to have with the question. And it's beyond the data, it's looking at the grassroots of why those complaints are coming in that we're focusing on.
Okay, great. All right, all good. Let's move on to strategic planning.
Now, I know we're short of time today, so what I'd like to do is spend as little time as possible going through the material you've already received, although I will cover it at a high level, and we'll leave about 10 minutes or so for the discussion. We'll just wait for that deck to come. Maybe I can start with this. I'll just say thank you again to the board for providing direction in terms of where we need to take this strategic plan over the next couple of years. And we've continued to do the work over the last couple of months. It's progressing really, really nicely.
Of course.
So what I'd like to do today is to share where we are in the strategic planning process, and then, of course, lean in on your support and any further considerations for the plan. So we look to you for the priorities to include in the strategic plan on March 6th. We've continued to elaborate on what those priorities are, and have also completed most of the community partner listening, as well as many sessions with employees as well as authors. So looking at that process, we'll check in with you perhaps one more time before, once or twice before the fall, when we come back in November with the draft strategic plan. The one outstanding piece is we are still going to connect with jurisdictional police partners. It has been a challenge to get time in their calendars, so that is outstanding. But we're also a good ways along in terms of setting some of the goals that come under those priorities that you've shared with us. So where we are is back on March 6th, we heard from you, be known to transit users, be known to partners, scale efficiently, draw attention to unmet needs of vulnerable persons, and then recruit and retain differently. And we took those statements and we translated them in a way that was more actionable for officers and staff. And where we landed is connect with more transit users. That also includes the scale efficiently piece, bring our specialized policing to public safety partnerships, and then connecting vulnerable persons with better supports, and attracting, engaging, and retaining through purpose-driven work. The one challenge you gave us as a board is to always ensure that the strategic plan is aimed at that outcome of perceived safety of the transit system. I asked all of you the question, let's fast forward to 2030, and what would cause you to say that MVTP had done its utmost for transit users and the public in terms of the safety of the system? And what we heard from the majority of you is that perception of safety. If people don't perceive this system to be safe, they won't ride it. That impacts the livability, the economic viability of many communities, 23. So MVTP is having quite an impact in terms of the work it does. In terms of the range of ideas that are coming up in our community listening sessions, our meetings with enterprise partners, as well as the 9 town halls with officers and staff, is time to relook at our deployment model. How can we use technology as a force multiplier? How can we lean more into data-driven approaches? We heard just before this presentation on the importance of making sure we've got that data architecture so we can lean into that work more. And then, of course, relationships with Indigenous partners. In terms of bringing our specialized policing to public safety partnerships, again, bringing a range of ideas and more to unpack as we meet with jurisdictional police partners. Opportunities to learn together. It's often said, those that learn together work together. So looking at cross-training and then bringing together JPDs on multi-jurisdictional crime patterns. And some of that also depends on that data architecture. Connecting vulnerable persons to better support. Again, a range of ideas from the community, the Chief Community Council, looking at a transit-dedicated mental health crisis response, similar to what's been done successfully in Toronto, as well as communication, stronger communication and referral pathways. And then attracting, engaging, retaining through purpose-driven work. Last time I had an opportunity to connect with you, we talked a little bit about the power of purpose. The fact that that increases engagement and increases productivity and retention. And so leaning into that in a number of ways, recruiting for intrinsic motivators, people that are drawn to the type of policing that MVTP does, looking at new recruiting partnerships, Indigenous-focused recruitment, recognizing the impact that officers and staff are having, and then also development opportunities. One of the things that we do as we're going through the strategy is look at how the inputs lead to those outcomes. And so this is a really simplified logic model. The engineers in the room will want to work backwards. We can work either way. So starting with purpose-driven work, if we have individuals that are motivated by purpose, we're going to see higher engagement in their work. That engagement is also fueled by better intel. So a better data architecture and an ability to be smarter in terms of how we deploy, also being able to share intelligence with partners adds value to the work they're doing and increases engagement. That leads to smarter deployment, and then also looking at how we use referrals and crisis response to reduce social disorder. And so some of the activities around there will lead to reduced crime, faster response, increased visibility, less social disorder, with the ultimate outcome being around increased sense of system safety. So working at forward and backwards, those are some of the options we're playing with. And this team has been really judicious in saying no to those potential initiatives, goals that are not going to drive a sense of safety. And that's really the art of a really clear, effective strategy, is being able to say no to those opportunities that are not going to impact better outcomes for the organization and for the transit system. Our next steps are to start identifying those indicators that is going to help the board understand whether they're winning or losing. That's something I often hear from boards. Give me indicators that are going to help me see whether we're making a difference. Best practice at the board level is 6 to 12 KPIs. And the analogy I often like to use is, if you look at your car dashboard, there are only a certain number of indicators. because human factors design tells us that we can actually track all of them at the same time very effectively. The same goes for the board. As we're looking at KPIs, we're going to select 6 to 12 that connect directly to the strategy, and we're going to check for balance. So many of you have heard of balanced scorecards. We're going to be looking for, do we have the customer perspective represented, internal processes, people development, financial stewardship? Rest assured that underneath the hood, there is a broad range of indicators that is being continuously monitored by the team. A vast array of metrics that that are currently being developed through that data and analytics initiative. So when I asked that question, let's fast forward to 2030, what would cause you to say that MVTP has done its utmost? I heard from at least half of you perceptions of safety, transit users' perceptions, public's perception of transit safety, as well as trust by partners. Ridership has increased, and then there was a couple around other pillars like crime and victimization, police activities and deployment, and then police resources. So when we come back to you with that set of indicators, you can expect a number of indicators of trust and confidence, perhaps one around crime and victimization, police activities, and deployment, perhaps one, and then police resources, one or two. And that will be the set that we come back to you on. So our next steps here are to complete meetings with jurisdictional police partners, identify any resourcing that's needed as part of the budget cycle, and Chief is already starting those conversations with the enterprise to begin to identify any costs that may come along with that, and then shortlisting our indicators. So I'm going to pause there, leave lots of time for questions, support, further considerations.
Just me, I'll take a moment before we go to questions. Christine, thank you so much for the presentation, all your work guidance. For the board, I do want to just touch on the town halls briefly that were conducted. 9 town halls held at both headquarters. We had leaders in the organization set up at 4 stations, really robust conversation and a lot of commitment to make those town halls work. Secondly, just that community consultation piece, and I do want to recognize the support of TransLink for Indigenous relations, our own ILO liaison officer and others who made that important sort of outreach, our Transit Police Chief Community Council as well for their kind of input on those community pieces. So lots happening there. And then the last and third thing that I'll offer, as the board is aware, we are looking at our operations deployment model review. And in that process, we will be able to engage with our membership around KPIs as we lead into, so the timing of that aligns well as we're going into our new three-year strategic plan.
Questions from the board? Yes. Yes, Carla? I was just going to ask, thanks, Chief, for bringing up the town halls, and I appreciate that, because it's probably one of the hardest things, is getting involvement and engagement across different stakeholder groups. And so I just wonder if there's a more granular, description of, what was the participation like internally, and then with the community. I've participated in this in other organizations. It's one of the hardest things. You want that meaningful engagement and trying to make sure that folks that you're talking to, like, this is top down, bottom up, like this is part of your work culture, and it's so important, right? So
and thank you, for bringing that forward. And I'll lay a context, and I'll leave others, but imagine a room and, 4 corners again, kind of leaders leading that dialogue and conversation. And so, we went through the board's priorities and then allowed people to give that sort of input and build on different, ideas as they went sort of to the station. So lots of engagement there. And then the other piece for the board, as we remember, we were looking at values as well. And so creation of that kind of word cloud, looking at values. And it was really interesting with the participation to see those coming in. And those values, some we currently have really being sort of reiterated as they came in, and something we'll look at more. And the other piece is allowing, for those not able to attend the town halls, we provided the opportunity for feedback to be given as well, just ensuring that full sort of organizational engagement. Also critically important is timely and direct feedback from the town hall. So again, lots of work to create just, report back as to what the discussions were at the town hall, provide that to the attendees.
And if I can offer an external perspective, the organizations that I really worry about is when you invite officers and staff to participate, to provide input into the strategic direction, and you get silence. What I can say is in many of the town hall sessions, I had to quell the chatter. And that's an incredible sign of how engaged people were. We ended up with over 100 ideas across the 4 priorities in terms of how we could move those forward. Now, some of them are at the level where they are going to appear in the strategic plan, and others are a little bit more granular and tactical and can be carried forward through an annual business planning process. But the engagement was really impressive.
That's fantastic. Yeah, good, great, good to hear.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add, it was interesting to see, 'cause we engage with our frontline officers on a regular basis, it's great. And just logistically with a 24/7 operation for all of our staff to get them all in the room at the same time is challenging. Credit to you for that work and Director Crosby's work. But we had officers come in after an 11-hour shift and engage in this work, and they would not leave. They wanted to stay and provide more input, which is actually very hard to see. And it was positive. So I was very impressed to see the officers who remained behind to provide that input and were very engaged in the conversation, which after an 11-hour day, that's not always the case. So it was fantastic.
And the final thing I'll offer is, it allowed for engagement, but the timing of it fell within Police Week as well. So it gave us also an opportunity to recognize, the membership at that time, during the time that the consultation was also occurring. And Stephen, I will recognize, Christine, I've recognized you, but, certainly, Stephen, your strategic, kind of vision with this, thanks, Christine, for all your work, but a lot of work by your team lead this forward. We look at the timeline, we're advancing on time, and really looking forward to our new strategic plan. So thanks for all your work.
Great. Any other questions, comments from the board? Great, thank you. We're excited to see it. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love how it's shaping up and all that happening. I had a question about the use of the word disorder in relation to folks who, I think it's kind of a fairly standardized policing term. I feel like the people that we would consider disorderly are actually responding in a very orderly way to a set of circumstances that's different than that you or I might have. So I'm curious if we might not be able to change that and still achieve the same communication.
Yeah, I mean, great question. If I think about the term disorder, it's often used about a set of behaviors rather than a person. So I think that's an important distinction to make. However, Carla, I think you would attest it, it's used very frequently in the literature in terms of how it impacts the sense of safety. And there are certain disorder behaviors that are associated with that that have been measured in MPPP surveys, things like shouting, harassment, vandalism, etc. So those are the types of behavior we're talking about. Now, there isn't a direct one-to-one connection between disorder behavior and vulnerable persons. However, there are perceptions when vulnerable persons are on the system that, people may not feel as safe. So we need to address that, along with the fact that, this is something that is becoming more and more frequent in our cities, on our transit system. So outside of disorder, I think there's enough reason for this to be in our plan. But, good comment. Perhaps we can use some more qualifiers next time we use that.
Great. All right. Thanks very much for coming in, Christine. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Wallace.
Very much. All right, let's move on to other business. So first item up is the BCAC annual conference, and we had 3 directors there. Directors Chan, Matt, and Myers. So get a quick update on that. Who's speaking for the group today?
I guess I can. Thank you. So just quickly, the BC Association of Police Boards conference was on May 20th to 22. The conference was really well attended by police agencies right across BC. The topics discussed were highly relevant to all participants, covering issues such as body-worn cameras, the topic of drug prices, police complaints, and of course, board governance. The BC Association of Police Boards executive led by Michaela Hayes did an outstanding, phenomenal job in bringing together a really impressive lineup of speakers, including the Honorable Terry Young, the Minister of State of Community Safety and the Integrated Services, and the Honorable Nina Krieger, Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, both of whom really expressed genuine appreciation of the work of the police boards and the police and the commitment of the board members who really volunteered their time and services in their community. And they also recognized the important role that police boards and police agencies play in protecting the public interest and really advancing the public safety. Some really notable presenters included ECOM, the Independent Investigations Office, the Office of Police Complaint Commissioner, and the Justice Institute of BC. I think for me, some of the, just highlight three quick takeaways that I reflected back. Patrick Lalonde from New Westminster, he emphasized the importance of broadening the community engagement by ensuring we recruit and attract diverse voices, including representations from special interest groups, working professionals, retirees, and individuals with relevant industry experience. Nick Bell from West Vancouver spoke about creating measurable impact through evidence-based policing. His presentation really highlighted what's called the targeted intervention, scalability, testing, performance tracking to achieve better outcomes for communities. And Stefan from Exxon emphasized that boards must foster a culture of innovation and be willing to embrace new approaches and technologies in order to help in the future of public safety. I think overall, the conference provided really valuable insights, practical ideas, and really good, meaningful dialogue on how police boards can really continue to evolve our governance and oversight responsibilities to maintain public trust, community engagement, and really support effective public safety outcomes. That concludes my report. By Paul, in case my other colleagues, Director Mann and Director I missed anything.
Yeah, I'll just say, you know, as a new board member, I think it was really valuable for me to be there for my orientation. I think, you know, I appreciate the collegiality and respect between agencies. Obviously, a lot of things we're tackling together across the province, so it's really great to see that and share learning and knowledge. And just highlight for me, I think that you didn't bring up was just the STPS, which is the only First Nations police organization in the province, and they did a presentation on the morning of the final day. And just the genesis of that organization and history and how they've evolved over time was really interesting and really unique, I think. Well, it is very unique in the province, so that was a great part of the session.
Yeah, George?
Just briefly as well, because I agree with what Bill and what Josh mentioned. I think we should acknowledge the work Bill does as our liaison, because clearly we've got a good relationship in that room, and you know, work with the room a lot. In fact, there was a baby that came in. I'm expecting Bill to be there. We're getting a little concerned that maybe Bill was going to run for office. You know, Bill has done a really good job, and I think it's really important for us to be a player in this. And I would say too that the minister had indicated when she spoke that there was going to be more than just the annual discussion at, you know, speech at the meeting, and that I hope through Bill and the executive there is follow-up, that there is regular dialogue. She said, call my office, want to have a meeting and stuff. That's often said, but I think it needs to be addressed because there are a lot of issues there, and we need to be in touch with it. And then the last thing was a presentation by the Vancouver Police Department in relation to body-worn cameras that had a bit of a technical, but not overly technical piece to it. It was quite interesting, and I was kind of hoping that maybe we as an organization, as we go through this process of discussion with a pilot project on body worn cameras. Are able to bring that in, if actually that inspector might even be willing to come and do the short presentation. Visually, it really kind of put things into context. I think for us as a board, it would be nice to be able to view that, and hear something a little bit different than, you know, some of the normal stuff that comes through, and a practical application that we can apply to our own discussions and our thought process around, you know, how we go forward on the pilot project. So I'm hopeful that that actually will die here.
Yeah, so follow-ups occurred with the Vancouver Police to see if that opportunity may be available for that inspector to come and give a presentation to our police board. So it's in progress currently.
Yeah, maybe I would just conclude and certainly want to thank the Chief Mayor and Deputy Chief Vincent for attending the conference and also supporting the CPABC. And I think that's important for all of us and the entire group. Certainly appreciate that.
Great, thanks for the update, and thanks, Bill, for representing us there. All right, we'll stay with you, Bill, for Finance Committee update.
Thank you. I'm mindful of the time, so I'll be quick. The Finance Committee met on April the 29th. Committee members in attendance include Director George Mannon and Director Joshua Myers and myself. Some of the key items include, I'll just comment on 5 key items. Quickly on the risk update, there were no changes recommended to the risk ratings for the funding or records management system. Management will refresh the risk matrix format to improve clarity and reporting. The Q1 financial results, they were noted earlier in our discussions. I won't add anything more on that one. Just quickly on overtime and staffing, that's a standing item with detailed report from Deputy Chief Bryce Graham. We continue to monitor and guard overtime trends, practice staffing levels, and upright strength. We did talk about the FIFA planning with respect to budgeting considerations and recovery of event-related expenses. And then we also got a quick update on the collective bargaining situation. But overall, the committee is satisfied with the organization's financial position and the ongoing monitoring of key operational and strategic risks. That concludes my report.
Great, thanks, Bill. Any questions for Bill? Good. Okay, let's go to Governance and Community Engagement Committee. George.
Sure. The minutes are included in the public package. Again, it's just ongoing. I think a lot of the community engagement continues the Indigenous relations where it's always reported out. Again, I think the focus of this board and through the BCAPB, it became very clear in the room to me that Metro Vancouver Transit Police is kind of above from what I heard other boards are, and this is just from discussions. It just seems that we are very active as an organization, as a board, and that continues to be a focus. So, you know, the visa is taking up a huge amount of time. I know in the fall we're going to be back out to the community in a different setting than we are today, but it's ongoing. It never stops. We appreciate the chief, the senior leadership team. Josh was just saying too, it's amazing the time that the senior leadership team puts into the entire team puts into the community, whether it's Blue Eagle or, you know, some other event. And as Josh just said, it's not like everybody's standing around. It's participating. I think we indicated that the chief was whipping on a lot of her shots. But I think that's so important, that the involvement, not only by the board, but the members and so on, continues, and it's a key piece to the discussions that we have in public here all the time, and our commitment continues that way.
Thanks, George.
I put you on the spot.
Josh made all of his shots. So.
There's no video of that.
Take all the shots.
I just in, you know, conscious of time, but I do want to just pause on that and thank you for those comments. But, you know, members of our team here, but, you know, so proud of the work our members are doing every day on the ground, out at events, engaging with community. And, I'll go back to the compliments report and different things, like, you know, it's things that are being done every day that no one sees. And the kindness, that, our officers show, you know, every day in engaging with public and often, you know, under very difficult circumstances, in some instances for all. So, just recognition for that, work as well. Thank you.
All right. Any final comments, questions? All right, let's close out this part of the board meeting. Next meeting is September 24th, 9:48. We close out, Terrence.